Good day, good evening. Previously, I discussed how you have to give credit where credit is due, and that very rarely do we run into people who are 100% evil. Um, Most of the people that we run into throughout our lifetime are people that have good traits, bad traits. And even the people that may have caused us some harm or have hurt us at some point brought something good to our lives. And so on Mad Day, you can't just throw out all of the good that they've brought to your life. One such instance is a friend that I had years ago. And um, when I didn't have a place to live, he allowed me to live in his dilapidated house on the first floor. Now, he had already started remodeling the upstairs. So his upstairs and his room was beautiful. But the downstairs, the back was sort of open and had water running in the back. Um, but I made a little pallet on the floor, and eventually was able to get a futon. But um, I remember when a couple other friends came to see me to see how I was doing. And they looked and they saw the conditions in which I was living. And one of my friends said, "My friends would never allow me to live like this." And that's all, that stuck in my mind. uh, and then, the last thing I see is, the two of them taking off in the other friend's car, heads cocked back. Um, uh, but I guess that's one of those youthful things that, we foolishly do to one another when we're young. Um, but it didn't, I laugh about it now. And it's one of the funny things that we talk about currently. But in the moment, it wasn't very funny. In the moment, it hurt. It hurt a lot. But, you know, you just, we're human. We come up short sometimes. Sometimes we say things without thinking about how they might affect the next person. And I'm sure that it wasn't meant to be hurtful. Um, it was just, wasn't thinking, I think, at the moment. So, the friend that allowed me to stay in his dilapidated house, um, I had met um, this guy, and I was sitting and I was talking to the guy, getting to know him. And, the usual things that happen when you get to know people, you may make out a little bit. And we happened to be kissing, and I see my friend sitting on his stairs, watching as if this was the movie of the week, just smoking. Something out of a Joan Crawford, Betty Davis type of movie. Ah, part of me wanted to curse him out. But again, I was staying there at his pleasure. So, sucked it up and just went on. Never even made mention of it. I told my other two friends what had happened, but I never made mention to that friend what had happened. By this time, I was no longer employed at my retail job. And so I was working at one of the community organizations. At that time, it was Unity. Well, actually, I started out working, not even working, sort of, I guess, trying to work or, semi volunteering, trying to help, maybe trying to work my way into maybe becoming an employee there at Action AIDS at that time and the trans unit. And someone from Unity offered me a regular position. So of course, I'm sitting here going from man to mouth. I'm going to take the position that's going to be paying me regularly. So the director of the trans unit, I remember when I explained to her that I was taking this position over at Unity, she looked at me and said, "Ooh, I see fire. I see fire in your eyes. You are ungrateful, and you are treacherous." I guess if trying to eat and have a roof over your head is treacherous, then yes, call me treacherous, because I certainly wasn't doing any harm to her or her organization, but I was making sure that I would be able to eat and have a roof over my head. So, the friend that introduced me to the people over at Unity, he had a house, and so he offered to rent out one of the rooms to me. And so, of course, I jumped at that. I was ecstatic. But the room on the second floor had no walls or doors. So when you walked up the steps, you immediately saw it was like a studio, the second floor. He, like the other friend, had the third floor, which was where his room was, well accommodated and appointed. It was nice. The friend that previously told me that his friends would never allow him to live in those conditions. At that point, he and the friend with whom he was living were not seeing eye to eye. So he came over as well. And he really paid the lion's share of the rent. He helped to buy a used refrigerator. At that time, the guy that was allowing us to live there, he hadn't paid the was it the water or electric bill? one of them, he paid that so that it would be turned back on. And so for a while, we were living okay, given the circumstances. But then this friend had a blowout fight with his mother. And so then he moved in. And oh, it became hell because he was fabulous. He would put on his mules and his fur stoles, and he would cha 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 up and down those stairs, clack 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 clack, all hours of the day. He would wake us whenever he felt like it. He would have another friend of ours take him to go get food, and he would eat in front of us and would not offer a piece. And for me, that is sort of contrary to everything that is within my DNA. We just don't eat without offering people food that are present. It's just unheard of for me. And at that time, our stomachs were growling. We were hungry. But by the grace of God, we made it. At that point, I was working at Unity, working telemarketing job, and I was working 3 jobs at one time. And still barely scraping by, working 3. That friend that was sitting there with the cigarette, feeling like Joan Crawford or Betty Davis. At that point, he had moved to New York City, and he had secured a very good job, and he needed an assistant. He thought of me. And because of him, the trajectory of my life took a completely different turn. I was able to go to New York, become his assistant. And it was great at first. And I was living with him because he told the people that I was a native New Yorker. I had my own place at New York. Unbeknownst to me, he had also told the people about my transitioning. And that was particularly appealing to one of them because his one of his family members had passed from AIDS. So he was particularly interested in helping somebody from the LGBTQ community. What my friend did not tell me was that he had explained all this to them. At that particular time, I hadn't changed my ID or anything. So, he was like, "Oh, I need a picture of I need your driver's license. I have to make a copy of it and send it to the main office." So I give him my driver's license. He goes, "Oh, no, this will not do. You can't send this like this." And so then he began trying to hodgepodge, make it look as if my name had changed to send that in. Of course, he did not submit that because he'd already spoken to them. But he just did that little exercise for me. And he, I don't know the true reasons why he did it, but I think in part was to have some sort of pressure always on me to, oh, I have to make sure when I leave that house that I'm on point. I can't have an off day. I have to be on point as far as my looks are concerned. Now that created a psychosis in me, and it created a living hell for me and for my friends later on. But that is for another chapter. So, I'm there living with him and everything's going well. And then suddenly, he goes to Reading and comes back with this boy. Now the boy is living with us. Okay, I mean, it's his apartment. It's, he had converted, I guess, the living room, dining room area, because it had doors, into his room, and I had the other room. Little by little, I noticed that my things were disappearing. And I, at that time, had a huge collection of music and CDs. And for the younger viewers, but we didn't have digital streaming at that time. So you had to actually go to the store and buy a disc to play your music. And that was the latest technology at that time. Because previously we were using vinyl records or cassette tapes. So I had a huge collection. And not only was I responsible for my music, I was responsible for my friend Rodney's music too, because we had our CDs together. Little by little, my music's disappearing. And I thought, well, maybe I misplaced something because, it's happening here, it's happening there. It's sporadic. But once I realized that he was stealing, I told him that you are going to have to get me another apartment. I sort of threatened him that you need to get me a new apartment or I will tell the people downtown what's going on here. Because he and his lover were smoking crack cocaine. So he worked it out so that I could get another rental apartment from them in Washington Heights. And that is how I came to live in Washington Heights for many years. And I'll discuss more of that in some other chapters. But I started packing up in preparation for my move. Do you know, he and his boyfriend took our entire collection of CDs and sold them. He sold his mother's dining room table. He sold my microwave. And The worst, he and his lover came into my room and were looking through my person and personal possessions because he was, I know you have money. I know you have money. And my mother called the police, thank goodness, and they did a wellness check. My friend Andre and his mother, they kept checking in on me. And I quickly, as soon as that apartment was available and ready, hightailed it over there. And that was the last that I saw of Paul. He stopped going to work because I certainly didn't mention anything to them about his struggles with drugs. He just stopped coming to work. He was calling out here, was calling out there. Of course, that was a complete 360 in his behavior. Eventually, they found out that he was addicted to crack, and they wanted to send him to treatment. He refused. I don't know whether he is dead or alive today, but I do know that I owe him a big thanks of gratitude because he did reach out and give me a position when I needed it most. He did give me a place to live when I needed it most. And all of the other harrowing things will never erase what he did in the beginning. You cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you have to give people credit, due credit, for the good things that they do. Thank you.